Before we dive into the emotional intimacy quiz for couples and the 4 pillars of relationship success, I've got a question for you. How low do you let your phone battery go before you scramble for a charger? All the way down to 0? Or do you get into action when it drops below 20%? What about 10%? 10% is kind of my freak out zone. I've got this theory that in relationships, we kind of let things drain all the way down to 1% or 0 before we actually do anything about it. Let me explain what all of that means, but if we've not met before, my name is Oliver and I'm a couples therapist here in West Hollywood, California, and I've been working with couples, families, and adults for nearly a decade. And I've seen this pattern show up a lot where partners or people in relationships wait until their relationship battery is nearly dead before they come into therapy. What most people don't realize, though, is that relationships don't just have one battery sign that you've got to keep an eye out for. There's actually 4 different indicators we need to be watching, and I'll tell you all about them in this video and how it relates to this idea of emotional intimacy and feeling connected to your partner. Because if you want to know what part of your relationship needs an upgrade, you don't necessarily need to trade it in for the latest iPhone model. You can work on the areas that need some tweaks. Just like your phone needs a stable Wi-Fi connection and storage and a healthy battery and a screen that isn't cracked to function well, relationships also depend on multiple systems working together to also function well. So when couples come to see me, they often focus on the one obvious problem. Maybe it's conflict, they're fighting too much, or maybe they're feeling emotionally disconnected. Those are distinct, very common, very real issues. But what I find is that relationship problems often go much deeper than the visible symptom. And it's my job to look at all the other aspects of a relationship too, because they all interconnect. I look at 4 key areas of a relationship that research shows are crucial for relationship health. How you communicate with each other, how you handle conflicts, the balance of power between you both, and your emotional connection. When a couple's relationship battery is running into the red, it's usually a combination of 2 or more, often all of them. A breakdown in communication might show up as emotional distance, or an imbalance in decision-making, that's power, might manifest as constant arguing. These are the 4 things that I'm assessing when I start working with a couple, and I made this emotional intimacy quiz to help me get a better understanding of what's going on with couples, and I decided to turn it into a tool for anyone to use. This is your emotional intimacy quiz, and when you take it, you'll get the results emailed to you in a beautiful PDF. It shows your overall relationship health, as well as a breakdown of each of these 4 categories. And if you sign up for emails, you'll also get some pointers and tips on what you can do to upgrade the area that most needs a reboot. Let's dive into these 4 core areas, and along the way, I'll give you a taste of the emotional intelligence quiz, some of the questions that I ask couples or some of the things that I'm looking out for. The first one is balance and equilibrium. If there's one critical element that most therapists, I think, overlook, it's this very delicate topic of balance, power, influence, and I think that's because we might not like this idea that there are power struggles in all relationships. We love to have this idea that we're in an equal relationship, but I don't think it's true. Let's take an example. Think about making a decision with your partner, like where you're going on vacation next summer or what restaurant you're going to on date night this week. Do you get your way half the time? All of the time? Some of the time? Or never? Obviously, if you never get your way or you always get your way, that's a massive power imbalance. But interestingly enough, getting your way 50% of the time is not the goal or the hallmark of a healthy relationship. What relationship psychology research is showing us is that it's more important that your thoughts and feelings about what restaurant you go to on date night or where you go on vacation are heard by your partner than it is actually getting to go where you want. Having your voice and opinions acknowledged is actually what counts. And this is where balance and power overlap with communication, because if you can't communicate well, or your partner doesn't listen very well, the 2 categories start blurring. Now, the bad news here is that there are always going to be differences between 2 people in a relationship. One of you is older, one of you cooks better, the other is going to be more social or goes to bed earlier. When feelings come up about those differences and they are not talked about, that is when things get complicated. There are some traps that we unconsciously fall into when we are not talking about those feelings. Take, for example, this question from the emotional intimacy quiz. Even when I admit I'm wrong, my partner doesn't forgive me. Now, you might think that's about conflict, and you're not entirely wrong, but it's also about holding on to power. Not forgiving someone is a great way to maintain the upper hand. And the research from my studies show that nearly 3/4, 75% of people who have an unforgiving partner also describe themselves as feeling disconnected, either rarely connected or totally disconnected from their partner. Think about that. Emotional intimacy is the next pillar. Relationships are much easier to understand if you get behind the idea that we have a part of our brain that deals with feelings and another part of our brain that deals with thinking. It is so much easier for us human beings to turn our thoughts into words, and surprisingly challenging for us to turn our emotional experiences into words and then share them with someone. In romantic relationships, if there's too much talking about thoughts, not enough talking about feelings, then that sense of connection, the spark of romance, well, it kind of dies out quickly because the conversation is all transactional or intellectual. Conversations consistently led by thoughts lead to relationships feeling transactional or disconnected. So one of the first things I want to know when I work with a couple is if they're actually talking about their feelings, the good, the bad, and the not so nice ones. Emotional intimacy isn't just about saying how much you love someone. It's also having the confidence and safety in a relationship to say when they've annoyed you or when you're feeling hurt. That is pure vulnerability right there, because there is a chance that they'll have a reaction to that may not go well for you. Emotional intimacy has to have some layer of trust and emotional safety, but also we need the communication skills to be able to express those feelings in a helpful way. Communication is obviously very much to do with relationships and overlaps a lot with emotional intimacy. Understanding how a couple communicates in their relationship can be incredibly insightful for me as a therapist. So our communication styles emerge from two dimensions. First of all, how open you are or how reserved you are. Some people share freely while others are more careful about what they reveal. The second dimension is all about how direct or indirect you are. Some people say exactly what they mean, others communicate more subtly. A direct communicator might say, I need some space right now, while an indirect communicator might say, oh, it's been a bit of a busy day for me, and then leave you to figure out what that actually means. Both are expressing the same need, but in very different ways. So understanding communication styles helps us see that tensions might not be about what you're communicating, but how you communicate. So instead of thinking, why won't they just tell me what they want, we might be able to recognize that they are more indirect and you might need to help them feel more safe to say things directly. Communication is also about listening. So one of the questions in the quiz is all about how well your partner listens to you. Partners who listen well are more likely to unlock everything else in the relationship. When people say that their partners are great listeners, 38% of them feel more comfortable in expressing their needs. 31% of them feel very connected to their partner, and they have an average relationship score of 71%, which is well in the healthy zone. When partners can't listen or don't listen, that drops to 43%. The next pillar is conflict resolution. When couples come to see me, they're often caught in what I call the blame game. That's when each person sees their partner as the problem, and my job is to help people recognize that the problem is the problem. Blaming each other doesn't actually resolve conflict, and it actually causes a massive amount of escalation. 88% of people who have relationship concerns report that things actually escalate and get heated, so a lot of people need this help. But what about when your partner or yourself avoids conflict? One of the questions is, when there's a disagreement, do either of you have difficulty in discussing what happened and why? It is also not very helpful or healthy when couples avoid talking about difficulties or disagreements. There's no conflict resolution. We're not able to talk things through and grow together and find solutions and understand each other more deeply. So emotional intimacy fades and couples feel even more disconnected. The data that I've analyzed says that if you're more likely to avoid talking about disagreements, you're 75% more likely to describe emotional connection with your partner as being disconnected or just rarely feeling connected. So the quiz I've created is designed to give you a clear picture of how these 4 vital aspects of a relationship are working for you. Whether you're struggling with a specific issue or just want to strengthen your connection, you've really got to understand all 4 categories. I think of this as a bit of a relationship checkup. It's a way to spot potential issues before they become serious. It's about understanding existing challenges with more clarity. Because just like that battery indicator on your phone, sometimes we need a clear signal to show us where to focus our attention. So I highly recommend you take this quiz and start understanding your relationship intimacy on a whole new level. Take the quiz, click on the link below. If you're in California or Los Angeles, you're welcome to book a consultation call with me if you're having relationship issues or want to talk about the results in more detail.